It's football and other F words solo edition at Senior Bowl. Stoney is feeling a little bit under the weather. We don't know whether it's food poisoning, whether I got him sick because I've been sick for a couple of days. We don't know. But we're going to blame food poisoning. It was not Winsel's. We haven't even made it to Winsel's yet on our Senior Bowl trip. Pretty much you know, it's a tough time right now. But I'm going to make it an effort to go to Winsel's on behalf of both Stoney and I while he is sick. I'm also going to try and carry the torch on our day 2 Senior Bowl coverage. And of course, most of you are probably tuned in to see the Mike Borganzi interview. I had roughly 15 minutes of one-on-one time with Mike Borganzi. We talked everything from leadership to Boston accents. Um, I asked him detailed, specific questions about the scouting process, about the draft process, about prospects, what is a Tennessee Titan in his mind, how he came to arrive to Dave Ziegler. That's all the stuff we're going to get to in today's episode. But of course, I got to thank our sponsors, Lyons Ford in Lewisburg, Tennessee, and then Mark Spain Real Estate over here, then Lyons Ford right there, Lewisburg, Tennessee. Most bang for your buck in your trade-in value, gives you all the discounts that you qualify for. They'll make sure that you walk away in the car of your dreams at the right price. Drive a little, save a lot. Go to Lyons Ford in Lewisburg, Tennessee, lyonsford.net. And then also Mark Spain Real Estate. Their reputation is just so damn good. It's hard to really say anything about Mark Spain Real Estate that they don't show you anytime that they are trying to sell your house and help you with your real estate needs. Mark Spain Real Estate right there. So make sure you contact them as well. So we're going to be continuing our live coverage of the Senior Bowl. So full disclosure on a couple of things that we have to get to, okay? So with the Borganzi interview, and then with my spot on cover 2 at 1:20 p.m. today, and then Stoney going home sick after practice 1, I don't have a lot of notes from the American team. So I just want to throw that out there. The American team coverage is a little lacking. I tried to do as much research, talk to a few people. So I do want to throw that out there, but we got some national team coverage from the first practice. And of course, I'm going to make all that up with a great Mike Borganzi interview. If you have any questions in the chat, let me know, and I'll answer those questions or at least jot them down to make sure that Stoney or I answer them tomorrow if I cannot answer them today. Because day 3 is kind of like that be-all, end-all kind of day. Your risers will end up, either continuing to rise or just be a flash in the pan. Guys like Mike Green, who dominated today, will likely not practice tomorrow. So it'll be real interesting to see who actually shows up on day 3. And then that's when you kind of find out how well did someone practice throughout the week? Did they play well enough to avoid the last day of practice, avoid the game, and solidify their draft stock? Who's still working on it? And as a matter of fact, I don't think any of these quarterbacks probably did that. The other thing I do want to talk about the Borganzi interview is that as I got into some detailed questions, we have to remember a few things. He's been here for a week, right? So nothing is really set in stone in the draft world anyway. But specifically on this is that you got to make sure that everything can have a chance to evolve, right? So what he may say now or today could be a little bit different or tweaked upon further, I guess, research into his current scouting staff, further research into these players, and further research into his own coaching staff as well. So it's not the gospel. It's not the be-all, end-all, but it's a good launching off point. And listen, if you think that I asked him about who has final say, give me a break. That thing has already been answered, already been said. It's already been asked 3,000 times. You don't need to hear anything about final say or anything like that. We got into football stuff. This is a football podcast. This isn't a gossip site. This is a football podcast. So we got into I had 15 minutes with the general manager. You think I'm going to ask about the frivolous crap that's already been asked? No, I'm going to talk about football. And that's what this podcast is going to be about today. Is going to be about the Senior Bowl football. All right. So I guess I'll just go ahead and go into the Mike Borganzi interview. We got about 15 minutes and 19 seconds of the Mike Borganzi interview. Listen, I'm having to produce this myself. I'm hoping that I get everything is situated pretty quick and effortlessly. So, without further ado, here is my interview, my 15-minute interview, one-on-one, uninterrupted, with Mike Borganzi. And I didn't have to show anybody my questions either. So, like, these are the questions. Everything I'm asking is stuff that I wanted to know and wanted to find out. And I thought that was maybe something that you guys wanted to know and wanted to find out. And there were a couple of questions I just didn't get around to asking because I only got 15 minutes and I kind of went a little bit overboard. But I hope that you guys find this very informative and insightful, just not only to who Mike Borganzi is, but what this Titans staff wants to be, but also just in general, how the draft process works, how teams view prospects and all that kind of stuff. So without further ado, this is Tennessee Titans General Manager Mike Borganzi, one-on-one with me. All right, I'm Zach Lyons. Zach Lyons here, part of 104.5 The Zone. This is, of course, going on football and other F words, but it'll also be wherever you get your Zone TV podcasts and everything. So I'm here with Mike Borganzi, General Manager of the Tennessee Titans. Congratulations.
Thank you, Zach.
Sorry that I'm in flip-flops and everything, but I lost a chunk of my toe recently, so I don't want you to think I always dress this casually, but can't fit in tennis shoes right now. So when you were hired, it was kind of immediately thrown out there by Albert Breer that you would likely be bringing Dave Ziegler on board as assistant general manager.
Yep.
So how did y'all's working relationship come about, and what it kind of detail his responsibilities?
So I've known Dave really since I got in the league 16 years ago. We met on the road scouting. So that's really when I developed a relationship with him. And right away I knew he was a smart guy. So over the years, similar to Chad, who I met 16 years ago on the road, you have those relationships with guys in the league who you're close with. And Chad and Dave are really close with, and we would always call each other throughout the season, whether we were, working on deals or trades or cut down day and talking players over the years. So I knew, for a long time that we wanted to work together at some point. So that's really how that relationship really started.
And so what's his responsibilities going to be? Is he kind of overseeing everything? Because I know everybody throws out the term operations, but like, what does operations mean? Like, if you're trying to explain it to a fan, what does that mean?
Yeah, so, he's going to be a sounding board and help me out in a lot of different areas, starting with the personnel department, the college, the pro. He's going to help me, align the staff and, different departments in the building. He's been in that chair before, so guys like Reggie, too. So I think, they're smart people, First of all, they're very good people, too. You want to work with good people that are smart and detailed. So, he's going to be a big help for me, a big sounding board, just in terms of managing every department.
Fans and media always like to start out with the negative stuff. So what would you say to those fans and media, the people that say, well, you just got two guys from the Raiders and they don't have winning records? What would you say to them?
Every situation's different where you're at. I've known them for a long time. I know, and you can go around and ask anybody in the league. They're very well-respected personnel guys who are very smart, very thorough in their evaluations. And I've had the benefit of knowing them for so long, so I know that.
Yeah. So when it comes, I know that you said, smart, fast, and tough in your opening press conference, but what are your non-negotiables when it comes to prospects to go beyond just fast and tough? Like those traits that a prospect has to have for you to even consider them on your draft board.
Yeah, the physical traits we're looking for. You have to stand out at this level. Obviously, from the college level to here, it's the physical. It's being fast, quick twitched, and there's going to be a size profile that we have at certain positions. So those will be, pretty much non-negotiables. But then really, it's like the character piece. Are they good citizens? Are they good people in the community? Are they good teammates? Do they actually love football? And not all the stuff that comes with it. So sometimes you get that. So that's part of the process here is we're really trying to dig down during these interviews of the character piece. These guys love showing up to football every day because it's a grind, especially when you get to the NFL now. It's a longer season for these guys. So it's the meetings, it's the film watching, it's are they good teammates? Are they selfless? That's the stuff we're looking for.
So how do you go about? Obviously you can find some of that stuff out in the interview process, but really, anybody can kind of have a good interview, right? And not really live up to the expectations. So what's that other step further that you guys have to take to ensure that what you're seeing in the interview process is actually that guy?
So just to rewind a little bit, this process starts, years before with our area scouts. So, And that's a big part of, when they go into the school and they're talking with, different coaches, people in the building, that's where you really start to build the profile, the character profile. And then if there's questions that need to be answered throughout this process, that's what we're going to do. And this is like really the start of it, these all-star games. And then we'll have the combine, and then we'll have pro days, and then we have the opportunity to bring them in the building on a 30-day visit if we want to do that. And then we have the opportunity to do Zooms now, which we use a lot in Kansas City.
How do you cut through the bull crap of like, does no coach or head coach in college football is really going to want to talk bad about their players? So how do you build those relationships and cut through the bull crap to figure out more about the players' love for football?
So we always say it's a relationship business. Yeah. So that's a big requirement for our area scouts when they get in the building is to form those relationships and to have. And then sometimes if it's a guy who's new to the school and maybe I've been through the school, I know the coach very well. So you work together to try to figure out that piece. And and if the scout says, maybe we need to dig a little bit more, do you know this head coach? And we start to make phone calls on that. So we work every angle on it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you talked a lot about leadership, specifically in your quarterbacks, but leadership in general for the players that you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
I always find it curious because I'm kind of a student of leadership and stuff.
Yeah.
And I've been in a couple of different, title holding positions.
Yeah.
But how do you define leadership? Because a lot of people think, well, the loudest person in the room or the most rah-rah, high-energy guy has to be the leader. So how do you define leadership, and how do you actually measure it?
So leadership is influencing people. How do you influence people? And that comes down to, having to build, whether it's a player, building a relationship with the players, your teammates, and then building trust with them. And then, do the players follow them? Do they look up to them? So those are the things we're really trying to drill down on, how do these guys influence their teammates? And that's when you talk about building a foundation of core players, draft and develop. Once you start stacking those guys, then it becomes a standard when you walk in the building, whether it's a draft pick or it's a free agent. There's a standard in the building of how we do things.
Okay, so, how do you plan to marry the analytics side with the scouting side? Because I know Chad Brinker obviously has experience in the analytics department and scouting and doing that both.
Yeah.
How much do you guys rely on the analytics along with the film?
And you have to mesh those together. We're collecting data, whether it's the evaluation of film, it's the character, maybe it's an analytical model that we're doing. So the more information we have, the better. We're always going to be a tape-driven team, right? So I think we're using analytics really to augment some of our decision makings and not necessarily drive it.
Right.
But obviously it's a big help.
So you and Brian Callahan and Brinker have all talked about accuracy, mm-hmm. and obviously. Me and Stoney behind the camera are big football nerds. So we know that accuracy is a little bit more than just completion percentage.
Right.
So there's an element of timing and placement that goes along into it. Outside of film, is there a way that you guys incorporate data to help you measure that kind of like quote unquote on-target throw?
Yeah, that's where you really have to drill down on is the receiver run the wrong route and all that stuff. But that's why you have to watch a lot of tape on these guys, a lot of film. Yeah.
So I don't know how much you know about the history of the Tennessee Titans, but this Titans team has, over the last few years, kind of struggled with this having competent left tackle and right tackle play at the same time, like even league average standards. And obviously, everyone across the league preaches the importance of building throughout the trenches, right? Everybody says we got to build through the trenches first. But how do you plan to actually do that, and what are you looking for while we're at the Senior Bowl from these offensive linemen?
Yeah. So the first thing with all linemen, you're looking at their feet. Can they move? How athletic they are? How do they cover up some of the deficiencies? And that's being like smart, tough, dependable. Sometimes strength overcomes some of those issues.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the players just having the awareness of where their weaknesses are, and then being able to compensate for them. So the biggest thing for offensive linemen is consistency. You have a couple of good reps. Can you do it throughout a game? So there's a mental toughness element to when you're watching these linemen.
Okay, so at your Kansas City days, you got Tyreek Hill, Mecole Hardman, Xavier Worthy, then also you guys signed Hollywood Brown. Yeah. All kind of seem to have a type at wide receiver. You know, how much of that was like a quarterback preference versus a need versus the prototype and profile that you guys built?
Well, speed, you need speed on the perimeter.
Yeah.
And speed opens up everything. It opens up, underneath patents for tight ends. So, we want to be a fast team, especially on the perimeter. So we made an emphasis in Kansas City to make sure we had fast players on the field to really stress the defenses. And that opens up a lot of things, underneath throws, the run game. So we want to be a fast team on the perimeter.
Gotcha. And so here at Tennessee, you obviously have Calvin Ridley on the side.
Yep.
He's got speed. So you're kind of looking for probably another speed guy throughout this process, you think?
Yeah,
even free agency?
They come in all different shapes and sizes, but we're going to look for speed on this team. And then smart players that know how to separate in zone coverage, too.
So would you say that, obviously speed's important, but that separation is really key, especially when you're in the red zone. You need to have guys that get open in a phone booth.
Yeah, no, it's very important. And contested catches, especially in the red zone, too. So you can't just have a bunch of small guys out there running 4-2. So you need some bigger receivers in there to make the contested catches. So that's going to be important, too, as we build it.
So you were talking about building out your size profiles and your prospect profile. So after you build out your prototype profile for players, you then probably have to consider some players may be exceptions. So, what does a player have to show you to consider him as an exception to the rule and worth putting on the team?
That's right. You don't want to have a team of exceptions. We had a standard, for a long time that we had in Kansas City because we were a press man team, so it's 5'11" corners. And we weren't going to pass up on Trent McDuffie because he was 5'10" and a half.
Right.
So you're looking at those other qualities in coverage and short area quickness and toughness and smarts. How do they overcompensate for maybe some of their size deficiencies?
Gotcha. So your free agency spending comments seem to be a little misconstrued that you guys are going to be cheap. But there is a difference between being cheap and being thrifty. Would you consider what the Commanders did in free agency this past offseason more of what fans can expect, kind of spending on veterans in key roles that provide leadership and talent?
I think there'll be a discipline to that. Like I said, it's not like we're not going to get free agents.
Right.
But I think Washington did a good job, and they brought in some veteran culture guys to that group. So I think that's pretty similar to what we're going to look forward to.
So I got two last questions for you. So I've been reading Ron Wolf's book, The Packer Way. So first off, do you have that book?
I do. I read it a long time ago.
Yeah, I had to buy it used, by the way, because it's not on audiobooks and it's not, not anywhere on digital. But what really stuck out was that man had conviction with a capital C in regards to Brett Favre, and he was going to be that dude since he was on the Jets scouting staff. Like, he knew that Brett Favre was that guy. Describe that feeling of conviction to fans, but also why it's so important to the draft process.
You have to have conviction and confidence in your evaluations, and we want all our scouts to do that. Over the years, we've had convictions on players, and there was probably a lot of naysayers about Pat. Why would you take that guy so high? He's a lot of interceptions, footwork, but we were convicted on that player. So I think that's important as you go through the evaluation of, being convicted on the player, but also realizing at some points where you might have been too high or too low on a guy. And I think that's an important quality too.
So, obviously the number one pick, and building off that kind of conviction, fans and media tend to think that the Titans have to draft a quarterback at the top of the draft. But drafting a player because you have to seems, in the NFL, like a recipe for disaster.
Right.
What's your philosophy on best player available versus need? And how do you define reaching for a player, and when is the right time to reach?
So you're always trying to marry up your draft board with needs. That comes into play. But we're always going to draft the best available player on the board. So as we go through the process and build the board, that's when you really start working through those pockets of, where can we get this player? If we really like him, do we take him a little bit earlier than maybe we should? But just having that idea and conviction of, this is the value of the player. We're not going to pass up a good player.
Right. So when you're building your big board and you got this scouting staff, now obviously, this particular scouting staff, a little bit measured, or I guess learned their processes and everything with the Patriots under John Robinson. That kind of carried over throughout the way. There's obviously some overlap between the Patriots and the Packers and all that stuff. Yeah. So how difficult is that for them to be transitioning when you're also trying to build the big board and establish your own way and your own identity?
So I've been through it, because when I came to New England, I came in with Scott Pioli, so it was the Patriots scouting philosophy. So I did that for 4 years. So I knew there was a transition there, and it's a really just, the grading scale is different, but it's a process. So the best way that we did it in 2013 when John Dorsey came there was, we're going to have these college meetings.
Yeah.
And that's the first time we're going to set the board. And that's a great way for these guys to learn the process and the new grading scale. So we plan to implement it during those meetings.
So you're trying to establish your own identity, and doing so, redefining what a Titans player may or not be. So final question, going forward, what does it take to be a Tennessee Titan? What does a player have to be a Tennessee Titan in your mind?
Yeah, like I said in the press conference, big, physical, tough, smart, tough, dependable team player. That's what we're looking for.
So do we all have funny accents to you, like everybody down here?
A little bit, but mine's probably more extreme than yours.
It's a little extreme. I mean, can I say this? Can I go, my favorite movie is The Departed.
Departed.
Is that pretty good, Boston accent?
Departed.
That's the only thing I can say in Boston. Bostonian.
Park the car in the Harvard Yard.
Park the car in the Harvard Yard. I think that's pretty good. I think I did pretty good. I appreciate it, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Zach.
General Manager Mike Borganzi here at the Senior Bowl. Thanks.
Thank you.
That was my interview with Mike Borganzi. Hope you guys gleaned some interesting insight into the scouting process and all that kind of stuff. So just, a couple of notes that I took that I thought was really interesting was that he's really big on high character players. And they're going to do all the research to cut through the bull crap to figure that out. Because we all know as Tennessee Titans fans that Isaiah Wilson, Kevin Dodd, for different reasons, did not really pan out. Kevin Dodd did not love football. Isaiah Wilson, character concerns and didn't love football. And so you look at it, and he specifically says stuff like good citizens, good teammates. And so when I'm probably going to be doing my research, I'm probably going to be looking at and paying attention specifically to who's out in the community, in their college community, who's out doing work wherever they may be coming from, maybe even in their hometown. Dane Brugler would be a good resource for that, right? The Beast. He has many, many paragraphs on all the top prospects. And that's when you can kind of find out, well, is that guy a leader, or what kind of background did this guy come from? What's he doing in the community? What's he doing at school? That's how I really landed on Jalen Harrell as a possible Tennessee Titan. They were looking, Brian Callahan said they were looking for team captains that played in big games. He was both of those. You also find out that he kind of got to start in special teams, and you got to look into his background about the leader he became. Same thing why I didn't really have character concerns about Tavondre Sweat is that you dove deep into Dane Brugler's thing, and you see that he eventually became a leader. You talk to the people that followed Texas, he eventually became a leader. So I think that is something really important to focus in on when you're doing your draft evals. Kind of, it kind of puts a little bit of an antenna up about Shedeur Sanders, because he talks about, the love of the game and not the love of the other stuff that comes with it. I don't think that that's the case with Shedeur, but I know that maybe a lot of people do. So maybe that's something that you guys can glean insight from. And I thought it was really interesting how he defined leadership and how he measures it. He says leadership is about influencing people. So it's not about being the loudest person in the room, right? I've been a bit negative on Jeffrey Simmons being considered a leader on this team. And everybody thinks he's a leader just because he talks the loudest and he does this and that. And I keep saying, I don't know what it's like in the locker room, but I will say that just because he does stuff out in the public eye and he's a loud talker does not necessarily make him an effective leader. And I thought that the way that he talked about leadership, influencing people, how do you influence people? Building a relationship and trust within your team. Do people come to them and look up to them? And he says that once you start building a foundation with those kinds of players and stacking those guys, that becomes the standard. That becomes the standard when you walk into the door. And I feel like for all the good that Mike Vrabel did, I don't ever feel like there was a real, known standard, right? like the Ravens have a certain way of doing things. The Bills, when you walk there, have a certain way of doing things. And if you don't do them, you get called out and you probably don't even make the team. Like the Chiefs are the same way. So building that kind of standard, I'm all in on. And all that kind of stuff. The analytics stuff was a little bit left a lot to be desired, but maybe the analytics just isn't his thing. Maybe he is, and I like that they're tape driven. Don't get me wrong. I think you should first and foremost be tape driven. But I wish I could have got a little bit more information out of him. And to be honest, I asked him about the building in the trenches questions, and in the moment, I'm looking for the next question, and I totally forgot that he didn't even answer the building the trenches question. Like, how is he going to do it? But I did think that doing the quick feet, tough and dependable, an awareness of their own weakness, a self-awareness of their own weaknesses, and how they compensate and overcome when it comes to what he's looking for in offensive linemen, I think is very telling of what they're looking for. I think what's really interesting in all of this is that it's really all about quickness. He talks about short area quickness when it came to Trent McDuffie and why he was an exception to their size profile. He talked about the quick feet. He talked about speed on the perimeter. He talked about having the speed and separation in the red zone, like all that kind of stuff. He does talk about that, but let's also say this: speed is not just how fast you run. Speed is also how fast you process information. So I think that there's that level of football instinct that he is also looking for in these players outside of just leadership. But I did think that was all pretty interesting on how he was able to talk about that. Uh, let's see here. He did talk about big, physical, tough, dependable players a lot, and I get it. Um, I think that just feels a little bit more cliche to me than 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 I think he intends for it to come off of. But I also think conviction. You have to have conviction and confidence, being convicted, but also recognizing the points where you may be too high and too low, and talking about the draft board and how you may have to make a slight reach because of your conviction, because of the player, and you're afraid that they won't be there the next round especially if you can't facilitate a trade of some sort. So a lot of interesting stuff that I don't feel like we've heard yet from Mike Borganzi. There's a lot more that I didn't even get to, but I also thought that marrying up your draft board with needs, but we are also going to draft the best player available. They're not going to pass up on a good player just because they may need a position at another player. They're going to stay true to their board, and that's what good teams do. So if you're in the camp that they have to draft a quarterback, well, that's what the Jets do. That's what bad teams do. They force a need when you don't have to or you don't need to. And I know the Tennessee Titans do not have an ideal quarterback situation. I've heard some things down here that make me question, you know, I just don't really know what they're going to do at quarterback, to be honest with you. But I do know that they have to fix it, but they do not have to be pigeonholed into fixing it with the number one overall pick. And you, as a fan or even media that follows this team, shouldn't want them to if they don't have conviction in the guy. Now, if they have conviction, boom, totally different conversation that we're having. But they got to upgrade Mason Rudolph and Will Levis. I just don't know if it's going to come in this draft, especially when I get into the conversation about the quarterbacks at the Senior Bowl. And I'm kind of starting to talk myself out of either of these quarterbacks in round one, the Cam Ward and Shadur Sanders. I don't know if that's how it's going to be come around closer to April. Just right now, I'm just kind of like, I don't know. The more I hear, the more I see, the more I watch, I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if this is the time for them to be drafting a quarterback in this draft. Let's get to a few of your comments. This is from Brian Brake. I already feel better. The organization is going. Already feel better. I'm assuming the direction the organization is going with these recent hires. Even though I did not like the firing of Rand originally, right there with you. I did not like the process and handling of the firing from a public relations standpoint, but I can see why they are at an upgrade, and I do feel comfortable with this Borganzi hiring day by day. The more I hear from him, and especially after getting to talk to him in person. Bustin Diamond says, I need the scheme, the Borganzi scheme. Brown and Casey says, all ball all day. But Bustin Diamond also says, joining late, but did you ask him about the Snead trade from his perspective? I did not. I know that there was a radio show that already did. So I just kind of try to stay away from questions that the Snead trade, I don't know. I mean, like, we don't even know if it's going to end up being a bad trade or not. I've heard some people who watched that particular interview. I think Eddie can tell you, Bustin, in the chat where he saw that, and he can remind you. But um, at the end of the day, they said it was more of a salary cap issue than it was anything else. So, I mean, that you got to take him at his word. But I didn't think I was going to get anything like juicy out of it in that particular situation. I really wanted to focus more on the scouting and the draft process because that's where I'm more interested in. I'm more looking towards the future than I am the past at this point. But I do believe Eddie is the guy in the YouTube chat is the guy that has kind of put it on my radar that another radio show said all that. Jason McDonald says, like the non-negotiable stuff, seems like every answer was consistent with size and traits, not looking for a team of tryhards. Yeah, I do agree with that. Is that it's I got to find the correct phrasing of Bill Parcells, but it does sound like they are going to build basically a size profile I call it a prototype, and that's what Bill Parcells called it. A prototype for every position. And there's going to be grades that go under the prototype and what round and what the grades do and all that kind of stuff. So, and all that to say is that I think they're going to stay pretty true to their prototype. But again, that's why I wanted to follow up with the Trent McDuffie question, or the answer. The question was, what's he going to do with the exception when that comes across? And he told you he's going to take the exception if they have conviction. And I think that is the way to do it. I think that's the smart way to draft. This is from David Gibbs. I feel like for the first time in a long time, our front office is aligned finally. Yeah, I would have to say that I think I share that sentiment as well. All right. Before I get into our Senior Bowl day review from day 2, I just want to remind everybody about our sponsors, Lyons Ford, Lewisburg, Tennessee. Drive a little, save a lot. They'll always give you the best discounts, or the most discounts that you qualify for, the most bang in for your trade-in, and bang for your buck and trade. I am just like cotton-mouthed right now. Most bang for your buck in your trade-in. All you have to do is just go to Lewisburg, Tennessee. Go see Mark Jeremiah and the crew down there. They'll take good care of you, of course. And then also Mark Spain Real Estate. They'll take good care of any kind of real estate needs that you want. Nashville's #1 brokerage firm is awesome, amazing. Mark Spain Real Estate. Just to remind you guys, even though I said it at the top, just to remind you, due to the Borganzi interview, due to Stoney being sick and leaving practice, that's how sick Stoney is that he actually left practice to take a nap and he could not stay, because that guy would have stayed if it was something just minor. But this was a big injury. And so we do not have the best coverage, because I also at 1:20 p.m. went on to cover 2 with Blaine and Lucas, and that was also during that practice. So I got very limited information on the American team. So we're going to try and piece it together and all that kind of stuff. Okay. So day 2 national team, which this is the team with Taylor Elgersma, Dylan Gabriel, and Tyler Shook as the quarterbacks. Okay, so I thought that Taylor Elgersma improved on yesterday, but it's not enough. I mean, really, you could make the argument that Tyler Shook looked the best today. I'd still lean Seth Hennigan as the best overall consistent player from day 2, and I still think Jackson Dart probably played better than Tyler did as well. But Tyler made some impressive throws. But Taylor Elgersma, He did navigate a muddy pocket and threw it off platform 30 yards in the air and dropped it right in the bucket to Jalen Noel, the Iowa State wide receiver. But Noel couldn't come down with it. The defensive back made a pretty good play, and he also hit a quick throw to the number 24 out of Syracuse running back, who I made a note to say, hey, go put that player's name in over 24 Syracuse, and I forgot to do it. So I do not know his name right off the top of my head. But that was for a big, nice gain. And I did think that the run blocking saw some improvement. That was all from 11 on 11. Going to 7 on 7, Elgersmer was very up and down. He had a very bad interception. He had a nice sideline throw, though, again, to no other than the sideline king himself, Jalen Noel, is what I'm calling him. And he's definitely not risk averse. But man, he puts the ball in harm's way every chance he gets. And it just is so reminiscent of having the tools of Will Levis, except for he's from Canada. Like, I would venture to say that if I were to watch the Canadian All 22A, the A22, that I would probably say, yeah, I'd probably have the same grade on him as I would Will Levis, or the same, I guess, hope that he could turn into something like I had with Will Levis. I thought Tyler was more decisive today. He took a lot of short throws, but he was very quick. That was something that everybody else kind of struggled with that he didn't. And Blaine brought this up today too, and I noticed it with the national team or the American team quarterbacks the second session, is that it seemed like everybody in the quarterback group was given their notes, given their critiques, given what to work on after yesterday's practice, read it, committed it to memory, and were basically robots trying to do that. And it just seemed like everybody was really slow today processing, except for Tyler. I thought Tyler was very decisive. Now, he made a couple of nice throws. And again, it's kind of like it was yesterday. He wasn't impressive, but he wasn't terrible. And again, he's just a backup quarterback. But I thought that maybe while he has been consistent and steady Eddie, he just hasn't had those big time throws that I think that the other quarterbacks have made as well. Gabriel, oh boy. I talked to a couple people down there that thought he was going to get a couple wide receivers killed. He was putting them in bad situations. He was probably one of the reasons why one of the safeties got on my radar, is because that safety was making plays and everything. So he was putting the ball in harm's way. He wasn't really scanning the field. He did on a couple of throws, but most of the time he's only reading half the field. He missed a wide ass open Xavier Restrepo down the left sideline because he didn't even look over that way. And he held the ball really long. He just kept patting the ball. And in this particular play, we're all like, throw it, throw it, throw it. I mean, we're screaming from the stands that because Restrepo has not gotten open a lot. Now, he had a better day today, but he was wide open. And we're in the stands screaming him, throw it left, throw it left. And he is looking just all the way over to his right and ends up just missing Xavier Restrepo. And I think he's a little too reliant on Tez Johnson. I think he leans into that comfortability, the wide receiver from Oregon. So to me, it's just like, man, I just do not see it with Dylan Gabriel right now. He's got another day to really try to bounce back. And maybe, like I said, it's a little bit of overthinking it. So maybe tomorrow everything will become second nature, because we'll talk a little bit about Jackson Dart and the bounce back he had in a certain area. But maybe it's just him not getting comfortable at this point. Jalen Noel, yesterday he only had like one play. Today he had like every play that he made was like a highlight play. It was insane how good he was. He had a rep against Thomas, the number 8 defensive back on Florida State. The guy that everybody has been talking about. He had a rep with him where I just barely missed it. I couldn't get to my phone in time. But it was an incredible throw and an incredible catch. And I mean, like, it made you think that when you're hearing him talk about tough, dependable, short area quickness, when you're hearing Borganzi describe what he's looking for from an athletic profile, Jalen Noel should fit that. So that is a guy that I'm kind of interested in from that perspective. I thought Jaden Higgins. Well, first off, all the wide receivers from the American team or the national team had a massive bounce back day. I mean, we're talking even Jaden Higgins did a almost a triple shoulder move, and he did it twice. He got it done twice on number 31 on the defense, and he was making better contested catches. He was getting open. He was using his technique and route running. Like I said, Restrepo was also getting open as well today. He was still having to make contested catches. Wasn't as consistent as what you want to see from Restrepo, and especially when you got him paired up against Jalen Noel, Tez Johnson, Kyle Williams, these faster guys that are around his height. But he just seems so natural at it that I think he's not like Lad McConkey and Tank Dell because he doesn't have that athleticism, and he may. I thought I'd walk away saying that he would be a round 2 pick, and I'm kind of feeling round 3, and I could kind of see a round 4 if his testing is less than desirable at the combine, because that's a guy that doesn't have a lot of athleticism. He's going to have to be the tape driven guy like that. Right now, Xavier Restrepo has to be. You have to watch the tape, be convicted about the tape for me to feel comfortable with Xavier Restrepo over some of these other guys. Pat Bryant had a nice little stutter step. Tez Johnson, I don't know what you could say about him. I mean, he just gets open. He gets open by wide margins. It doesn't matter who's on him. It doesn't matter if they press him, they play off of him, zone man. It doesn't matter. Tez Johnson's that dude. He is this year's Tank Dell, and he has one of the highest yards per route run against man coverage. This is a guy that he's super small, okay? But I said the same thing about Tank Dell, and I'm sort of right. Tank Dell hasn't been able to stay healthy, but do you take that chance? That's what you have to ask yourself. Do you take the chance that maybe he's more Xavier worthy in durability than he is Hollywood Brown and Tank Dell? And does Tank Dell give you enough? If you were a Tennessee Titan fan, wouldn't you have loved to have Tank Dell last year, even for just half the season? So you're looking for guys that can kind of flip the game on one play. And Tez Johnson, man, he just feels like that guy. I thought Kyle Williams had another day where I think he was better than yesterday. He kind of showed some flashes, but today he showed flashes all day long. Shout out to Kayla Anderson. I know she'll love that. Go Cougs. The other thing on top of that would be Jalen Lane. He was the victim of the bad quarterback play today. He got open, even being grabbed by Thomas from Florida State. He got grabbed, got held, still got open, still got overshot. These quarterbacks have been terrible. It's just bad. And I thought Jalen Lane was the victim today. And yesterday, he was like the standout. Today, he got pushed back into the pack because of bad quarterback play, not because of his talent. I know a lot of you guys are probably looking for trenches. I did not bother Stoney for his notes. Papa Bear's sleeping. He's hibernating. So we'll get all of his notes tomorrow, and then, of course, Friday and Saturday. But I will say this. He did talk about a lot of the right tackles, or the guys that were left tackles yesterday played right tackle today. So your Easley, your Connerly, Anthony Belton, all those guys got to be on that right side today. He did say that Mike Green is just going to Mike Green from Marshall. And listen, be French if you just throw in the people that you want me to know that I need to give you the colleges on, because he's saying, Zach, you're throwing names out there and I have no clue who is who. Can you include the school? You just let me know which ones you're most interested in. I'll throw those out there. Maybe someone in the chat can help you. I'll try to be more mindful though. So I know that Mike Green from Marshall, the edge from Marshall, he just straight up plowed through Josh Connerly today. I mean, there's a clip, I think I put it out in the timeline. He just plowed through him. He said, "I know everybody thinks I'm a speed guy, but I got some power moves too," and he proved it today. Um, caught a little bit, and I caught a little bit more of the defense and caught myself watching them a little bit more in the American team. But I do want to say this: um, safety from Navy, and then the safety from Toledo, Maxon Hooker is the safety from Toledo. The safety from Navy rarely came off the field today. So high motor guy, he was making plays, he was directing the defense from the safety position. But Maxon Hooker, he just popped all day long. And I wasn't even looking for safeties today. I wasn't even going through with the aim of saying, hey, this guy, I got to watch safeties today. I kind of wanted to, but I just kept drifting towards the quarterbacks and the wide receivers. But Maxon Hooker was just making plays all over the place. And he was matching up against everybody and everything. And I thought it was really interesting to see. And that's a guy that you got Maxon Hook, you got Amani Hooker. That could be a good duo back there because Maxon Hooker is a very good run defender, kind of an in the box kind of guy. I think there's something there. Remember, Quinion Mitchell, who is in the Super Bowl, who got an interception in the playoffs, he was also from Toledo. They're doing something in Toledo with those defensive backs. Keep an eye on that. So we are going to let me just check the chat real quick. Let's see. Make sure there's no questions. Okay. Any Syracuse Orangemen showing anything to anyone? So I did bring up Syracuse earlier today, the running back from Syracuse. And actually, Chris Johnson also brought up the running back from Syracuse because he's down here. You know, he scouted Chris Johnson, former running back for the Tennessee Titans. He scouted for the Senior Bowl this year. LaQuint Allen. And this is what he said. And he popped. Okay. LaQuint Allen popped. Showed good burst and power, good route running, and good hands, and is ready to compete with anybody. He'll be gem of the whole draft out of the running backs. He is hungry, and that dude popped today. I will say that. I caught his helmet a couple of times throughout the last couple practices. And again, I haven't really been studying the running backs. It's just like the running backs have to show themselves right now because I feel like the Titans are in need of an undrafted free agent. But like Ollie Gordon, LaQuint Allen, or Jarquez Hunter, Damian Martinez, Devin Neal have all shown up all week. There's also another one. If you'll be patient with me, because people were asking about quarterbacks or running backs. Okay. Marcus Yarns. That was the guy that was really showing up today. Marcus Yarns was, man, he was making some plays. Like he's tough to bring down. He's from Delaware, and there was just something about him that just stood off the page for me. No Omar Norman Lott today. Cannot figure out why yet. Arian Smith from Georgia had a couple of back-to-back drops. One-on-ones must have been a different story between the defensive line and offensive line because when they got into 11-on-11s, defenses were feasting. Jared Ivey was having his way. I also thought Josiah Stewart was getting stuff done as well. I'll say this, like, in 11-on-11s, and listen, Mason Taylor had a good day catching the ball, and I think he rebounded in the 1v1s, I guess. I didn't see the blocking 1v1s, but I had a couple of people came over when Mason Taylor was doing the receiving that told me that he was getting blown up. So then they get into these 11-on-11s, and like that LSU crew, they did not have a good day when it came to team drills. I was very disappointed. Now, you get to the Miles Frazier 1v1s or the Emory Jones 1v1s, and you could see them on the clips. It's a different story. But in the team drills, that's kind of what matters too, I would assume. Jalen Milrow. No. Next. Like Jackson Dart, I thought, I alluded to it earlier. Jackson Dart, I think, made good strides from day one to day two with handling being under center, uh, handling the ball, the quarterback center exchange, and all that kind of stuff. He made some good decisive throws. But Milrow, just tough day. Just tough day. So I would say this. I would look at it and say that if you were looking for a quarterback 3 again to emerge, and we were looking for one from day 2, it's still not a guy here. It's Kyle McCord or Will Howard. I don't know which one it's going to be, but let me tell you, it's not one right here, right now. And so I would say, man, like, and Princely, he kind of looks like Jadeveon Clowney to me out there. And he had some good stuff. He had a good 1v1 where he maintained some contact balance and stuff. But I think Jared Ivey is better. I need to go back and watch the tape because that's what happens at the Senior Bowl. I see things and I'm like, man, Jared Ivey really seems like he's going to translate to the NFL game a little bit better than Princely may. Yeah, it was really weird. Let's see here. I mean, again, I didn't have a lot of day 2 American team notes because of scheduling. So that is about all I got to see. Kind of sucked, to be honest with you. I mean, I love having the Borganzi thing. It just was the timing just did not work out in my favor to catch a lot of the day 2 American team. And I was really interested in seeing more about Carson Vincent, who I didn't get to see. Some more of the Upton Stout. Now, I will say this. What I did get to see Upton Stout was sticky in a couple of different scenarios. It doesn't matter how big you are; he's playing to your size. He's phenomenal. Billy Bowman Jr., the safety out of Oklahoma. So Upton Stout was a safety out of Western Kentucky, or defensive back out of Western Kentucky. He'll probably play in the slot. I think he's feisty enough that he'll play in the slot. I don't think it's not like he reminds me a lot of Jarvis Brownlee Jr., except for I always thought Jarvis Brownlee Jr. could play outside as well as inside. I don't think that Upton Stout can play outside. And I will say this, Billy Bowman Jr. did not have a good day today. It was bad. And he had a good day yesterday. So now day 3, you got to figure out what's what. Like, then you'll have the game and all that kind of stuff. Let's see here. I don't see any other questions and all that kind of stuff. Let's see. Okay, JD says he joined late. He says, "Are you higher, lower, the same on Connerly after today?" I am the same because I didn't get enough information from the guy that I trust the most, Stoney. But tomorrow, because it's Friday, I'll probably on that day the roster kind of dwindles in a way because the guys that have shown enough, like a Mike Green, will likely not practice tomorrow. They've done enough, they've shown enough, they'll likely call it a day here at Mobile. So that means that I kind of like free range and roam a little bit more than I do the first 2 days. So hopefully, if Connerly is actually going to still practice, because he didn't have an A+ banner day like he did yesterday, and right now Gray Zabel is apparently the cat's meow. Like, he is the cream of the crop here at the Senior Bowl. So good for him. Titans just don't really need to spend a first round or second round, high second on a guard necessarily. We'll see what free agency does. Other than that, hope you guys enjoyed the Mike Borganzi interview. Hope you guys got some insight out of it, and hopefully I'll be able to do it again. I don't think I embarrassed myself too much. I think he appreciated the football questions and all that kind of stuff. And I got a little bit of fun at the very end, making fun of his accent and stuff. You have Pacquiao in the Harvard yard. Pacquiao in the Harvard yard. Is that what it was? So other than that, the corner from Louisville. Yeah, I noticed he is making a lot of plays, but he did have one bad play, and I believe is against Jalen Noel. And so but one bad play doesn't really mean anything. So there's a lot of good corners down here. The problem is Tennessee Titans don't really need a corner. That may change, but I just try to focus a little bit in on the stuff they do need. So I've been like last year, I was very cornerback and wide receiver heavy because I knew the Tennessee Titans needed a cornerback. This year, they need a safety, but they really need a wide receiver more just because of how the safety position has been devalued. So I've been really focused in on the pass catchers this go around, but hopefully I will see. I'll try to get you all some more varied information and analysis as far as tomorrow wraps up. And then, of course, we have the game on Saturday, 6 p.m. tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Friday. And right after the game on Saturdays, when you'll get to see Football and Other F Words again. If you have any questions, hit me up on Twitter at the Zach Lyons. You also send questions to Stoney Keeley at Stoney Keeley on Twitter. Other than that, this has been Football and Other F Words, and you have just been effed.